Senator Risch, how are you?
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you for coming. You just got out of the 2024 session, right? Like you're home for the holidays?
Well, I come home every weekend, so it's not. Believe me, you get off the airplane, kiss the ground when you arrive in Boise.
Do you do grounding? Like where you take your shoes off and wrinkle your toes in the dirt? Tell me you do that.
No.
Okay. Well, something to look at. I had a friend. Okay.
I usually get my hands in the dirt somewhere over the weekend, though, because I ranch, and I try to get at least a day out, partial day out on the ranch.
I was watching Die Hard last night, which is hilarious because it actually talks about that was the first popular representation of critical infrastructure attack from terrorists that I'd ever seen, right? Because they have the Firestorm or whatever the heck it is, unlike Die Hard 12. But in the first one, which I was watching last night, quite possibly the best Christmas movie ever, he literally gets off the plane and he's like, dude, you got to take your shoes off and rub your feet in the carpet. God, they had it back in 88. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so look, we have our incoming President-elect Trump. There is a lot being discussed about his nominations. One of the things that he's talked about very intensely is having better people to nominate, understanding what the process is when he comes in. He's like, look, you got to have these guys lined up. What are your thoughts on the nominations he's had so far and general support for him?
Well, let me put this in context first. The media gets really spun up about these things. And as usual, they're off kilter on it. Everybody's coming around to us and saying, are you going to vote for the president's nominee? Are you going to vote for this nominee? To put this in perspective, for the last 32 years, out of the thousands of votes that have been cast by senators, only two people have each cast one vote against a nominee for a cabinet level position for their president. So how many negative votes do they think they're going to be on this? It's just not going to happen. They get all worked up about it, and they'll find some flaw in one person or another. And look, these are all human beings. They didn't get them from heaven. They got them from earth, and they all have something that you can talk about. But look, he's done a good job of picking these people out, and we're going to get them confirmed, all of them.
So your position then is really like, listen, there's no reason to suspect that you're going to, cut with the standard of supporting his nomination. It's literally just media spin trying to get people to pay attention and sow some kind of anxiety within the populace.
Past is prologue. History tells you that I voted 100% for every nominee he made in the last time around. He's doing a lot better this time. Why would you think I would back up from that? It's not going to happen. Well, and look, this guy is different than most presidents. He takes the advice and consent thing seriously, and he listens.
That's great. That's great. And especially understanding, again, I have such a distaste for media outlets that intentionally try to get people worked up. And that's all they do, right? Like that's the whole nature of the beast, because you're not going to get clicks unless it's like, oh, will Senator Risch be supporting this? It's like, oh my God. Can you just stop?
And this issue is a poster child for that exact thing.
Gotcha. So with that, and coming back to the Die Hard, and again, best Christmas movie ever, but coming back to that, the one thing that I heard from Representative Hill and a lot of other people within the state of Idaho is that our critical infrastructure, specifically our power grid, is one of the things that they're most concerned about. There's been a lot of discussion of what Idaho Power is doing to secure the power grid and secure our specific sites within the state of Idaho. Nuclear is a big question, right? Like we have an atomic city in the state of Idaho, which is awesome, and ARCO, and we have Idaho National Labs. All of these things are pushing towards energy independence. What do you think about nuclear? What do you think about integrating it more thoughtfully and conclusively throughout the United States and specifically Idaho?
Well, first of all, I come at this from a long, long history. The Idaho National Lab is the birthplace of nuclear energy in the universe. In 1951, we lit the first light bulbs anywhere to prove that you could use nuclear energy to produce, or nuclear power to produce energy, electrical energy. We did that. And after that, the rest is history. I mean, it took off, and it blossomed at the beginning and did really well. And then 3 Mile Island came along and spooked everybody in America. And we backed off of that. But the most we ever had, I think, was 103 facilities in the United States, whereas the rest of the world was taken off on it. And now it's all over the world. Many countries are exclusively nuclear. So this is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's the way it's going to be in the future. And right now we're on the cusp of doing something I've been after them for a long time to do. And that is they're finally moving away from these great big behemoths that they built that were multi-billion-dollar facilities and going to what they call an SMR, a small modular reactor. And coming right behind it's a microreactor. And those are going to, those two are already changing the landscape out there. I deal with countries all over the world every day, particularly Eastern European countries right now as they're disconnecting from Russia, are really looking at nuclear. They're building nuclear. They're making contracts. We compete with the Russians, the Chinese, and the French every time there's a nuclear plant built somewhere in the world. We want America to be right up at the top. We're the gold standard. They should take us. A lot of times they do, but in recent history, they have not. Over recent years, most of the contracts have gone to either the Russians or the Chinese because they're cheaper. They're subsidized by their governments, which we don't do. And my friends say to me, well, why don't you do this? The reason we don't do this is we're a capitalist country, not a socialist country. Right. We use the money generally to improve America. The Chinese are very good at taking the people's money, building roads in Africa, building bridges in Africa, or a port in Africa, and getting, at least on a temporary basis, some thankfulness from the government. I can tell you this, governments around the world would much, much rather deal with us. Why? Because of our values, coupled by the fact that we are a nation with a rule of law. You can count on us. Not so with Russia and China, obviously.
Right, and obviously you have more, South American countries that have a similar shaky foundation for actual business dealings. There's been a lot of conversation in recent years, and especially, for instance, let's say Trump's first presidency, when there was that whole push to bring back American coal. And I don't know anything about that because I'm a ding-dong. I don't work in the energy sector. But is that a conflict? Like, are these goals of saying, hey, we want to increase the strength of this industry in conflict with bringing nuclear online?
I'd say not. I don't think it's a conflict. I think what it is it's a natural maturity of the energy sector. I'm the senior Republican on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. Could have been chairman of that committee if I had wanted to be. Had a whole bunch of committees because I'm the senior on them that I could have been chairman of. But I've been tied to nuclear for a long time, and I've always said, look, the first choice ought to be nuclear. If you can't do it, then you look at something else. But the benefits of nuclear are just astounding. You use a very, very small footprint to generate a whole lot of electricity and zero carbon, which is what people want to do. Whichever side of the argument you're on global warming or what have you, it's a good thing to have less carbon in the atmosphere. The way to do it is with nuclear. A good example of the footprint is the goofy Biden thing going on, or they're trying to do over at Lava Ridge, where they're taking 100,000 acres and going to put in 251 windmills. And then they're going to send all the energy to California. If they took 40 acres of that 100,000 acres, they could put a nuclear plant on it and do a whole lot and generate a whole lot more energy. And in any event, since it's all going to California anyway, California ought to be taking care of themselves. We ought not be generating electricity for California. Don't get me started.
Oh my gosh, I've spoken with many people about this, and I had Dean Diamond in here, obviously, the real champion for defending that area, and it's unbelievable that the BLM has taken public comment. 100% of the public comment from the citizen to the top politician level has been do not do this, and they do not care at all. They just did an ROD, record of decision, a couple of weeks ago saying, okay, we're going to move forward, and it's an unbelievable. I was speaking with the president of the cattle associations this morning, Spencer Black. There's such a connection between grazing, cattle operations, and the maintenance of the state of Idaho, and especially the open areas. And to see this section, hundreds of thousands of acres, just get taken away to mate. And of course, they're like, well, you'll be able to graze on it eventually. It's like, well, who's going to cut the grass in the interim, right? While you're building these 700 plus foot windmills, who's going to take care and manage the land?
Well, look, the good news is that this is going to end on January 20th or shortly thereafter. the President of the United States is going to sign an executive order doing to Lava Ridge project just what Biden did to the Keystone Pipeline. He has the power to do it. I have reason to believe that he will be doing it on the 20th or shortly thereafter. Look, this is an awful, awful project. And like you say, I don't know if you've seen the video where I cross-examined both the BLM director and the Secretary of Interior on it. And this is why people feel the way they do about their government. They got an edict from the White House that said generate X number of kilowatts of electricity and do it with wind power. So they went out and did it. And the law says they have to hold public hearings and listen to what the people are saying. Well, they heard it, but they're not listening. And anyway, we're going to take care of that.
That's wonderful to hear. And I did hear from, I believe it was Governor Little, that he was saying, hey, look, we're hopeful that this will get squared away with the incoming administration. But hear from you as well that it's like, hey, you have reason to believe, you're not going to tell me why, but you got reason to believe it's going to get squared away. That's fantastic. And I couldn't agree with you more. This is one of those things when you explain the situation to people. I was ignorant of the situation before I met Dean Diamond and then heard the story and then started talking to a lot of other people. But to understand that the federal government literally can just come in, take mass swaths of the state that are public lands, install a private business onto it that is not a zero impact business, and then pump the benefit of that business to some other state. I was like, what planet are we living on? Yeah. This is bonkers. So if we have nuclear and we can do this, how does that affect our national security? Because one of the big concerns that a lot of people have is energy independence. Where do you see the nuclear implementation across the United States as helping us with our defense and our position?
Well, it's part of the all the above philosophy, and that is you shouldn't turn away from anything. You should look for the appropriate type of energy you're going to use for an appropriate thing. For instance, we've got nuclear reactors on all of our naval ships that run the ships. Perfect, absolutely perfect. They can go to sea now. Used to be they could only spend a limited period of time out there. It's almost unlimited what they can spend. They got to come back every so often. But that's a great philosophy and a great way of doing it. I've been after the industry for a long time, saying, look, size these things down. And they said, oh, we can't do it. And the engineers just have a bias towards the behemoth. Right. And now they're finding, I said, look, if you can put it on a ship, you can put it on a trailer, for crying out loud, And I no, it doesn't work that way. Well, it turns out, yes, it does. And they're going to be able to do that. So that's a good thing. And Biden went about this thing. I mean, just you wonder how these people think. On day one, he killed the Keystone Pipeline. I mean, within months, he's out talking to the dictator running Venezuela with a tin cup saying, oh, send us more oil. I mean, it's crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. And he was playing to the radical environmental wing of their party when he did that. And that's what he did. And it's nonsense. We're going to go back to doing what we did under the Trump administration, where we were not only energy independent, we had all the energy we needed and we were selling it out of here. And we're going to go back to that when he takes office on January 20th.
I understand that there, especially when you're dealing with fossil fuels, I understand that there's the byproduct of carbon, which, again, that's what people are worried about. Obviously, the concern with nuclear is what do you do once you're done with the rods, right? And it's a similar concern that people have with solar panels. They're like, listen, these have a terminal lifespan, and what do you do? And I don't know if you go down this granular technical, but like, what do we do? Because it's not like there's not a question.
Do you know the only country in the world that worries about this is the United States of America? There are numerous, out of the 200 countries on the planet, a high percentage of them have nuclear. And when I sit down and talk with them, not one of them raises the issue of waste. And so when you drill down into it, for instance, France has a very aggressive nuclear. They are one of the lead countries in the planet on nuclear. And they put the rods in. They use the rods when the rods are done. The rod looks like a long pencil, okay? When you're done with it, they take it out and they put it in a package and they put it in the ground right there at the facility and move on. I mean, it just isn't like here in America where we dug that multi-billion-dollar hole in Nevada that was a great, great repository for nuclear waste. And everybody is wringing their hands. Oh, this is terrible. It's going to come back and bite us. Look, it's buried so deep that you couldn't get at it. And in fact, a lot of people were saying we shouldn't do that because technology is going to change and we're going to be able to reprocess this stuff and reuse it.
And then we're going to want it back.
Then we're going to want it back. That's exactly right.
Get the shovel out. Let's dig it up. Gotcha. So the bottom line is that the concerns that people have just are not justified when you look at the rich history and successful daily maintenance of nuclear plants across the ocean.
Well, that's true. And like I said, we suffered a horrible setback with 3 Mile Island. Look, this was an accident where no one got killed, no one got hurt, but it scared the heck out of everybody. And it was done in the early times of nuclear energy. Right. It's a lot safer now. There's a lot more technologies in place to shut these things down long before something like a meltdown happens. So it just, and what's happened, I think the reason for the renaissance here in America is the fact that that people who were around then are forgetting about that. A lot of them have passed on. And the younger generations, they're not afraid of this kind of new technology. You know, nuclear, when nuclear power started, when people thought of nuclear, they thought of a mushroom cloud, you know. And,
right.
It's apples and oranges. It's an entirely different thing.
Yeah, I actually have a friend who inherited this old car, like his grandparents, collected this old car. It was old for them, and so it's super old for him. And I asked him about it, and he was like, "Oh, it's a train wreck. Like, you have to keep the battery plugged in. I think it might even be a crank. I can't remember, but the point is, like, he said the brakes are terrible, the acceleration is terrible. I don't even know if it has clickers on it, right? Like, you got to like use your arm, but." That's analogous to the types of, nuclear plants that people are worried about. It's like, listen, you're not running that bad boy 85 miles an hour down a freeway and you're going to get sideswiped by like a BMW. Like, we have different technology now and we're still remembering the legacy concerns of the past. But it's like we've obviously moved on from that. Like, we have iPhones, man.
That's true.
When you talk about digging, we have minerals in the state of Idaho, and we talk about energy independence. We also have real critical, ingredients in all the technology that we take for granted every single day, be it battery technology or semiconductors, things of that nature. Everybody remembers a car during, the last 4 years when we had that shortage of, I think it was the semiconductors or chips or something. It doesn't matter. The point is you get a rental car in Hawaii or something for like $5,000 a day because nobody had cars, right? That's a breakdown of the supply chain and our dependence on other countries to supply these things that are very, very critical and very disruptive to the United States. What can we do to do better management with that?
Yeah, I've been doing this a little while, and it's only recently, I think, that people have realized that our supply chain is a real weakness in our economy, in our national security. And Congress has set about doing a number of things in that regard. Look, when the world opened up, and that's only been in recent decades where the world has turned, the marbles become pretty small, and we invented here, as we frequently do, the technology of chips. And we, Micron technology, we all watched it being built out there and start up and do great and glorious things. And the maturity as chips got better and better. But the chip industry around the country, the various chip manufacturers said, wait a second, we can build these over in Asia and pay people a fraction of what we're paying them to manufacture them here. Packed up, moved over to Asia. So now all of a sudden we wind up in a situation where COVID taught us, and then the Ukraine war brought it home even more to us, that things like semiconductors are critical to our national security. If we got cut off on semiconductors from Asia, our economy would grind to a halt. You don't make anything anymore without a semiconductor in them. And we are now dependent upon other countries. China's one of them, obviously. There's a real bottleneck in Taiwan because Taiwan has the only manufacturing facility, although that's about to change. They have the only manufacturing facility that makes the highest end microchips, so that when you put microchips in, whether it's a refrigerator, car, what have you, you put lots and lots of them in there, but they also all answer to one super chip, and that's only made in Taiwan. Well, what do you think would happen tomorrow if China marched on Taiwan, took it over, and got mad at us for helping Taiwan? I mean, this is a serious problem. The result of that was the CHIPS Act. And for people who supported the CHIPS Act, like myself, to think about doing a subsidy to a private industry makes you sick. Having said that, it is a national security issue, and we needed to bring the chip industry back here, and we're in the process of doing it, and we're going to do it. The exact same thing has happened, for instance, with enriched uranium. America uses a lot of enriched uranium for the power plants, but for a lot of other things. We quit enriching uranium because it was cheaper to do it somewhere else. You know where we're buying it from today? From Russia. Now, remember, we got a war going on with them. We're sanctioning them. We're telling other people we can't do business with them, but we're buying it from them. That's going to quit here pretty quickly because, again, what we did is we did a stimulus to restart up our enrichment industry. Plus, there's a number of other countries that are way ahead of us that are friends of ours. And, in fact, I was a lead. I drew a bill. I was a lead on the bill that puts a drop-dead date at which we cannot buy 1 ounce of enriched uranium from Russia anymore forever. Now, Congress can change forever, obviously, but it's going to stop, and it's going to stop quickly. But these are just a couple of examples of things that we have found in the supply chain that need to be fixed, and we're focused on it. When it's a national security interest, we're focused on it.
Is there... And again, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but are there other things that are like this? Because I think the supply chain issue and our dependence on other countries came really quickly into sharp focus, even for the common person, where it's like, oh, everybody needs an N95 mask. China has them all, right? Like, and that was a horrifying. Again, that's back when people were like trying to get masks. But
I agree with that, and that was the first slap in the face that we got is during COVID, when everybody said, "Well, we need gowns, we need
PPE equipment,
we need all kinds of stuff," and everybody said, "Well, we can't get them because they're all in China," and that was kind of the first wake up call that we had, and now other things have come out. You mentioned the critical minerals. That is certainly something that we are very, very focused on, and it's changing. You know, when they started doing lithium batteries. Remember, the only source of lithium in the world was in China, some small amounts elsewhere. We went to work on that. Private sector, bless them, went to work on that. And now they have found deposits of lithium. There's one over in Oregon that they say will last us forever and ever. And these are the kinds of things that we're doing to fill in those gaps, because they are incredibly important. And you just can't wake up one morning, find yourself with a gun to your head and say, well, we got to defend, but we can't because we don't have this, that, or the other thing.
Right. And Idaho in general has a very rich history with mining, right? Like we have good resources here if we can gain access to them.
The picture on our seal, amongst others, is that of a miner mining in the mountains. So it's part of the history of our state. Obviously, it was gold and silver they were after, but they were sitting on a lot of other stuff that they didn't know how good it was at that point.
Yeah. One more question. Idaho to me seems to be a real example of government functioning well, and government functioning well, not for the near term for the individuals that are engaged in it, or, the medium term, but like really long-term things that have been done. You were the governor of Idaho, less than 20 years ago, fewer than 20 years ago. It's my understanding that you did things that have really stood the test of time, like the roadless rules. Help me understand that.
Well, if your first point, the point that we've had steady government in Idaho is interesting. You'd bring that up because, when you look at other states, there are a lot of states that do whiplash. They have a governor that's Republican, then one that's a Democrat, one's right, one's left. In Idaho, we have had an unbroken string of governors since Phil Batt became governor. Obviously, you had Phil Batt, followed by Dirk Kempthorne, followed by myself, followed by Butch, followed by Brad. And all of us are cut out of the same cloth. Phil Batt was a mentor of all of ours. We've all been friends. We obviously we have disagreements on small stuff, sure. But when it comes to the role of government, when it comes to the rich history we have and the culture of Idaho, that we balance our budget, we were all the same. There's no different. There is an ounce of difference between the five of us. When COVID hit and all these states were wringing their hands and their economies are going upside down, I said, by the way, we're given a tax rebate in Idaho, and they just fall out of their chair. How can you do that? They said, well, I said, well, because we take balancing the budget seriously, and frankly, it comes back to the basic. What is the role of government? The role of government is to do what people can't do for themselves and not try to do everything for everybody. I serve with a lot of people back there that truly want the United States of America to be a nanny state. They take care of you from when you're born till you die. They pay for your birth, they pay for your funeral, and they take care of you everywhere in between. That's not what America was built on. That's not America. We have what we have because people wake up in the morning wanting to better themselves. And how better to better themselves than to innovate, to produce, to educate themselves. That's how you move forward, not wait for the government to come along and do it for you.
Could I add one question, last question, I promise. I have a million, but I know you're limited on time.
You guys always say this.
I moved here about 3 years ago. All right. On January 12th, it will literally be my 3-year anniversary pulling up. Since I have moved here, I have heard a million times from a million people just like me that they moved here and they're like, oh, we need to save Idaho. We need to save Idaho. And in that is always an assumption that, one, I have an understanding of what Idaho is, a conclusive idea, right, of what the state is. And two, I would know how to preserve that, having shown up like 15 minutes ago. And that's led me to really question, like, okay, what is my place? What value can I bring to the state of Idaho? So for people like me, which are, hundreds of thousands in the state, what is it that we could bring? What value do we have here?
I got good news for you.
What's that?
That is that this, for those of us who've lived here a long time, this state looks a whole lot different than it did even 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And the population is much. When I was governor, we were the third fastest growing state per capita in the country. Today, we're the fastest growing state. And I tell my friends back in D.C., they say, oh, boy, I'll bet your demographics are changing. And they said, where are they coming from? I said, about 40% come from California. They go, oh, my gosh, 40% come from California. Oh, it's good. You're not going to be here long, are you? Yeah. You're going to have I said, well, we register by party in Idaho. And the party registration is up for Republicans to 53% and Democrats down to 12%. And they go, what? And I say, the people that are coming here call themselves political refugees. And most, not all, I mean, you can't paint with too broad a brush, but you can look at the statistics and the dynamics. And people coming here, they don't want to change this place. They have found this place. They came here for a reason. And they like what they see, and generally speaking, they are a conservative brand of people. And if they just follow their values and continue to be themselves, they're going to find that they're like Idaho, and Idaho's like them, and things are going to be really, really good here for a long, long time. God bless Idaho. God bless the United States of America. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir.